On this episode of Coastal Cooking Presents Quick Bites, we're making crab and crawfish cakes. Stick around and find out how it's done.
Welcome to Coastal Cooking Quick Bites, brought to you by Pensacola Energy.
Welcome to Coastal Cooking Presents Quick Bites. I'm your host, John Scanlon, and we have a very special guest today. We have our marketing coordinator, Maria Stolfi, and she's picked a recipe out of the Fiesta Seafood Cookbook, The Taste of Pensacola. What are you cooking for us today, Maria?
I'm making crab and crawfish cakes. So let's get started, right? So of course, start off with turning your burner on. Go with a medium-high heat because you want to start with your butter first. Go ahead and let that melt completely. So then you're going to put in your peppers, red, yellow, and your celery. Now those are going to get tender completely. And you'll know whenever your peppers start to smell. That is the best way you'll know.
So basically you're just cooking them down.
Yes, of course. So add in your peppers and your celery. Just mix that in.
And that's about 2 tablespoons worth of each?
Yeah, 2 tablespoons of each. And right now it kind of seems like a lot for crab cakes. But when you mix everything together, you'll see that it's not a lot. And at the end, it does add a little bit of crunch to your crab cakes. And it doesn't take a lot to have them cook down. If you're kind of in a hurry, just turn up the heat a little bit. If you like a little bit of extra crunch to your cakes, don't let the vegetables cook as long. So once these cook down just a little bit, then you'll add your Old Bay seasoning and your blackening seasoning. Now you can add any type of blackening seasoning. Some people like Tony Satcher's. My favorite is Slap Your Mama. I just like saying it, but it is my specialty. So you'll add your blackening seasoning and your Old Bay. The Old Bay is going to bring out the extra flavor in the seafood when you add that later. And when you mix it in, it is going to feel like you're stirring around sand with your with your vegetables. That is completely normal. When I first made this recipe, I thought it was a little weird. But just stir it around, it's completely normal. And make sure it evenly coats all the veggies that are in there. Once it's evenly coated, go ahead and add your shrimp stock. Shrimp stock is kind of hard to find. You can also substitute it for fish stock or lobster stock. And this is about 1/4 cup. So that will deglaze a little bit. It will kind of kick back at you. So let that cook for about a minute. And this is a very different way of cooking crab cakes. Usually when you cook crab cakes, you just kind of mix everything into a mixing bowl at first. So this is a very different way of cooking it with a little bit of a wetter way to mix it. But once we get into the mixing part, you will see the crab cakes kind of form together. So once this is done kind of cooking, then you'll add your seafood, which is lump crab and your crawfish, also known as crawdaddies. Shout out to Jim. So throw that in there. And then you'll mix that around. Make sure that the seasoning is coated completely with your crab. The crawfish will have its own flavor of spice, but make sure that the crab meat is completely coated in your seasoning. Smells good, doesn't it?
It smells excellent. So are the peppers already tender, or is it just kind of still cooking? Or
they're definitely tender now. And like I said, if you wanted a little bit of extra crunch to your crab cake, go ahead and just throw the peppers in and just start throwing in your blackening seasoning and everything. Some people like a little crunch to their crab cakes, and sometimes you want them a little bit softer. And like I said earlier, this is on about medium-high heat.
Throw that over some rice and we're good, right?
Exactly. This is a very good mixture. Okay, so once this is simmered down a little bit, we're going to turn down the heat to simmer. You can turn it completely off because we're going to add it into the mixing bowl, which it doesn't really specify in the recipe. It just says to cool a little bit. So I put it in the mixing bowl, kind of figured that out the hard way at first. So we're going to add that into the mixing bowl. Put it back on the burner. The good thing about cooking with gas is that you can really control your heat. So now we have it in our mixing bowl. Add the panko. And then it says to lightly beat your egg. Of course, when you mix it together, you're lightly beating your egg. So we're just gonna fold in your panko and your egg. So as you're mixing it, it's gonna cool down a little bit so you can actually form your cakes. If your mixture is a little bit wet, you can always add more panko crumbs. The recipe calls for a cup, but if it's a little bit wet, you see that the cakes aren't gonna stick, just add more panko. Now egg is like the glue for cooking. So now that it's sticking together, roll up those sleeves and now you're ready to make your cakes. So depending on how you like your cakes made, it calls for 3. You can always, 3 is like a little bit big, but depending on your crowd, you can make them smaller. So I always like to start off, because I'm full Italian, so you can start off with a meatball and kind of flatten them out and make them into a disc, just like that. And flatten them out and make them into a disc. Just like so.
Excellent.
Then you can put them back onto your skillet.
Now, do you want that on simmer or do you want a little higher? Or?
Well, right now, since you're trying to control your heat and make your disc, you can put them on simmer.
Okay.
My chef in culinary school always taught me, if you're not really paying attention to your pot, always start your gas off on simmer. It's where you're not paying attention to it, keep it on simmer, it's not really cooking. Then whenever you're ready to watch it again, crank up the heat. And the tighter you make your crab cakes, the more they're gonna stick together. So don't be afraid to put your muscle into it.
Look like hamburgers.
Right? Now panko crumbs compared to breadcrumbs are a little bit more crunchier. So if you ever forget to go to the grocery store and forget your panko crumbs, your breadcrumbs are gonna be tasting more like a hamburger than a panko crumb. All right. So now that I'm paying attention, I'm gonna crank up the heat a little bit more. All right, now we got the heat turned up just a little bit more. We're about to flip these puppies over. You really just want to keep them about 2 to 3 minutes on each side, depending how big your crab cake is. So you can just hold it on one side and just flip it over. And really, whenever you're about to flip it over, just make sure you're pressing it down just a little bit, because you really want that inside to be cooked all the way through. You don't want it hard on the outside corners and then mushy in the inside. Now that the heat is up, just give them about 2 to 3 minutes on one side, and then just make sure you secure, and then we're gonna go ahead and flip them over and just pat them down on one side, because you wanna make sure that they're well cooked in the middle. You don't wanna leave them super mushy in the middle. So just almost like a Krabby Patty. All right. There we go. 2 to 3 minutes on each side. Flatten them down.
So we're 2.5 minutes away from plating these things.
Exactly. And they're smelling really good too. All right, now these are ready. So, go ahead and pick your favorite plate in the house. And these are ready. Now, if you have like a house specialty remoulade sauce, go ahead and serve that up, or however you want to do it.
They look fantastic, Marie, and this recipe was found in the Fiesta Seafood Cookbook, A Taste of Pensacola. That's a cookbook with 25 years of history from the Fiesta Seafood Grill at the Pensacola Seafood Festival. That's where local chefs have all put their time and energy in preparing foods for everybody. And they put the recipes in this book, and you can buy it for $15. All the proceeds go to the Escambia Utility Assistance Program to help the elderly pay their utility bills. Give us a call, 850-436-5050. Pick yours today, and you can be making crawfish and crab cakes very soon.
This has been Coastal Cooking Quick Bites, brought to you by Pensacola Energy.